Hey guys, and welcome back to the Pennies podcast with your host Kia. And this is a podcast where we aim to dispel your myths, simplify difficult financial jargon, and rectify your own personal problems. Happy Monday. I hope you've had a great weekend. We are here to give you some pizzazz, just give you some vibes, as always, on a Monday. And to do so, I have a very special guest with me. Guest, who are you?
Hi, my name is Mary-Grace. I'm a finalist law student at the London School of Economics and Political Science. And I'm a content creator online who talks about education and beauty. So.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. If you have not seen Mary-Grace online, I'm convinced you are not online. Because
what are you doing?
What are you doing, really? Because you are literally everywhere. Like, I have been on my social media where I'm on my personal account, where I'm on Pennies to Pounds, and you always come up, always for the right reasons, of course. But your content is just so good. I mean, you share yourself and your journey, which we're going to get into in a minute, as a law student, but you also share some of your tips. And I love that you incorporate beauty. You know, we just need to, we like to see all parts of you, which I really appreciate in your content.
Thank you.
But before we get too ahead of ourselves, I want to ask you, how has your academic journey been so far? So we know where you are today, but talk us through that journey. First and foremost, though, before you get into it, we have a link.
We have a link?
We have a link.
Okay.
And I know we have a link because I was going through your content the other day, and I was like, oh my gosh, we actually have something very much in common.
Okay.
We went to the same sixth form. Yes, I did. I attended.
You went to Brampton Manor?
I went to Brampton Manor Academy for sixth form. Yes, I did. So when I saw that, he's like, oh yeah, Brampton Manor is my old sixth form. I said, oh my gosh, that's my old sixth form.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Well, that's why you're doing so well, isn't it? Oh my God.
That's why you're doing so well as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you went to Brampton.
Brampton Manor
so
Academy.
we're going to get into that.
We're going to get into that.
OMG.
Yeah,
Wow.
see, I told you we have something in common. But go on, talk us through your journey and we can touch on that when we get there.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for having me.
Always.
Since I was young, I don't know if it's the Nigerian in me, I don't know if it's my parents, I don't know if it's the area I grew up in, but I was someone that was always told, like, the world is your platform and you have to be excellent at whatever you do. Like, being like average or getting like a C grade, like that was just not, like I was not allowed to do that. So from when I was really young, in primary school and stuff, I just went to a normal state school. The teachers would like kind of always push me. My mum would always give me like extra work, and I would have like a tutor as well. Like, I think I had a tutor from maybe like year 3 or something.
Wow.
Like very, very young. And I was just constantly always pushed because I think my parents must have seen that I was quite good at like the academic stuff. So in year 4, they started to hear about the 11 plus exam, which was done to get students into grammar schools. So I have a brother who's 2 years older than me, and then they tried it with him, but they found out a bit too late. And people prepare for these exams from when they're really young, from like age like 7, like really, really early in primary school, just to get into a really good secondary school. So they tried it with my brother, and because he didn't pass because they just found out too late about it, they started preparing with me when I was in like year 4. So like during summer, I would be going to like these summer schools in like a big hall with like all these students I was basically competing with, doing a lot of 11 plus preparation. And then I got into a grammar school in Kent, which is, amazing. I live in Essex, so that's where I'm from. So I went to a grammar school in Kent. So that was them already like, you know, trying to make me different to like everyone else who went to like my local state school. My grammar school experience was very interesting because even though it was a good school, it wasn't that great. And I feel like that was because, and no disrespect to like the South London people, like shout out to South London. But a lot of people in that school weren't from Kent. They were from like Southeast London and stuff. And because I was from Essex, I was exposed to like a bunch of things that were just not in my area. Like, I don't know how much I can say, but like drugs, and like fraud and like just, not good things. So I didn't get caught up in that, but I was around a lot of people who were like that. And even though they had gone to the grammar school and they were smart, they were still kind of doing those things.
That's so interesting that they were still up to that as well.
Yeah, so it was a very weird, like, hybrid and mix of people. But in year 10, I think I just grew, like, not exhausted of seeing all of that, but I was like, that I just don't want to do that. Like, that's just not me. Like, I still remember everything my parents have told me. The world is your platform, you know, you're not meant to be mediocre. And I didn't want to make stupid decisions, essentially, when I was young, just because of the environment I was in. So I was like, okay, I really, really, really want to do well. And one of my friends who was in the year above, she was applying to the top 3 East London schools, which was Brampton, LAE, and NCS.
Yes.
So she was like to me, oh, you should like leave your grammar school when you get to, you know, sixth form level and then just go to one of those. So I went to LAE and it was all right.
It was all right because I did a tour as well. I did the same thing as you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I felt like I was in the office.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. NCS, I just didn't even bother looking at, to be honest. But Brampton, when I went with my auntie, she was like, MG, like, you have to go there.
Yeah.
So then I was like, okay, I want to... And this was before Brampton was even really, really big. So I was like, okay, Brampton is where I'm going to go. So I'm just going to focus on my GCSE so I can leave this school. So results day came... I was even late to my school. That's how much I really didn't care about the school. At this point, like, I came up from a holiday on that day.
Oh my gosh.
Literally, like, I really did not care. I grabbed my GCSE grades in the car, drove straight to East London from Kent, and then went to Brampton. Brampton was amazing. I think we'll probably get into the details of that later, but Brampton was absolutely amazing. Like, I owe pretty much everything to that school. And because everyone there was, like, the top of their class and really smart, there was no one putting you down if you wanted to like achieve big things or if you wanted to go to a good school. Like I didn't really care about Oxford and Cambridge before going to
Brampton.
Yeah, before going to Brampton. So being in that environment where you would even get laughed at if you didn't apply to Oxford or Cambridge, and like people would laugh at you if you got like a B grade. It was very, very different to like the grammar school where everyone still didn't really care. So I think I really utilised that because I really, really wanted to go to Brampton and already kind of thought, okay, I want to be a lawyer and stuff like that. So did well. Thank God for the grades that they gave me because COVID meant that we couldn't even do our A-levels, actually. Wow. But because of all the work I'd done, like I was still able to get my grades. Initially missed getting into LSE on results day because of the mess. So got into Warwick, but then after the grades U-turn, got into LSE and...
Here we are today.
Here we are.
Wow.
Yes.
That has been a journey for you.
Very long. I also got rejected from Oxford, which helped me a lot in terms of like my ambition and stuff and I think what I do now. But I'm so glad to be at LSE.
Amazing. Well, we're going to get into Oxford a bit more in a sec. But let's circle back.
Yes.
To Brampton Manor Academy, where we both have been.
Yeah.
So I don't know what year you actually went. I'm probably a couple of years older than you.
So I went 2018.
So I went 2014 to 2016. And that's when I went to Brampton. So Brampton, at that point, when I was applying, so I was a similar mindset to you, right? So I went to a state secondary school and I was one of the only ones who said, I'm going to get out of this. I just don't want to stay here. Because my secondary school had a sixth form as well and everyone just naturally applied to that. I didn't even bother applying. And I said, I'm going to Brampton. And I did the same thing. And I remember I got my grades and I drove straight to Brampton. And I was the first external student to be...
Really?
To apply and get the place on results day. Because as soon as I got my grades, I said, in the car, we're going. I need to get to Brampton. And I remember they sat there and said, oh, what school are you from? And when they said I was in Brampton, I said, oh, you're the first one. And they signed me down. That was me, Brampton Manor. So obviously I was there, was that a good 4 years before you? And that was before people were starting to know about Brampton. And they were still doing what they're doing now, but it wasn't as, widespread as it is now. But how was your experience?
I loved Brampton. And some people really, really hate it because that intensity and stuff, they didn't like that. But for me, because of my ambition, because of what I want to do with my life, I love the intensity. Like, it makes me, feel excited. So I was, very typical Brampton student in terms of I think they probably had this in your time as well, getting to school at 6 a.m. and leaving at 6 p.m. So
we started it, by the way.
You guys started that?
As in we started, as in the year before weren't really doing it. And it was my year when we found out, I remember we asked Mr. Dobin, sir, what time does sixth form open? He's like, the doors technically open at 6 a.m. So it was me and about 7 other people who would get in routinely at 6 a.m. and then we'd all stay until 6 p.m. and it became just a natural part of being at Brampton. But it wasn't a thing prior to my year.
Wow.
We would have started doing it. So there'll be a whole collective of us getting between 6 and 6:30. If you're one of the first people there, you'd open up all the doors.
Wow.
Kind of get everything, everyone's going to come in afterwards. Yeah, that was just the thing that we started. And it just kind of seeped through, obviously, to your year and all the years afterwards.
Yeah, now that's an integral part of the appeal. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So I loved that. And bearing in mind I was still coming from Essex, so I woke up at like 4:20 a.m. to get on like the 5:19 train to get to Upton Park for 6. Like it was a lot. My parents thought I was crazy. Like, they said, okay, we want you to do well, but like you're doing too much, you know what I mean? But I loved it. I think it taught me so much discipline, and I also loved being around people that weren't like me, in the sense that I think now it's more diverse in terms of like the areas people come from and stuff. But at that time, I think I probably lived like the furthest. Probably. In terms of, getting on the C2C, living in Essex. Most people were from East London. There were still a lot of Brampton internals and people just from that East London area. So I think being exposed to them as well gave me like a whole different insight into like seeing my life and seeing maybe certain privileges that I may have had that they wouldn't have had. And that made me even want to just work harder. So I loved Brampton. It was very intense. It was very intense. Like emphasis on very intense.
Very intense. Like I can't even put it into very intense.
It was like even more intense than uni to an extent.
Oh, 100%. No, 100%. 100%. Like as in obviously we study different degrees, but my uni experience was like it was paled in comparison to Brampton. Like,
no, literally, because
nothing.
With Brampton as well, they're very on you and it's very hands on. Yeah. And because I did mostly humanities, so the classes were a bit smaller than like the STEM side, the teachers would really like rip into you with the feedback and stuff, and it was just crazy.
Speaking of your rejections though, we mentioned Oxford. Talk us through that. What was the process? So you applied there, what did that look like, and how did that impact you being rejected?
Of course, so like I said, I didn't really care for Oxford and Cambridge at all when I went to Brampton. Like I just thought I would just go to like Warwick or something. Like I just didn't really care. But being there, everyone would say, oh, Oxford or Cambridge, like which one are you applying to? Like it was like part of the conversation. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm applying to one of them. Went to a Cambridge, like...
the open day thing.
Yes.
Yeah, we went, yeah.
I went to one. It was like a women's, I think it was like their women's only college. And when I went, like I just hated it. Like I was like, it was just like, oh my gosh. I was like, I can't go here. And my parents were like, why? And I was like, I just don't like it. So I was like, okay, it has to be Oxford now. But like not many people were going to Oxford. People were still more Cambridge than Oxford at that time. So then I went to a summer school with Brampton actually for Oxford's like open day. And I stayed at, I think, Wimbledon College or something. And I really loved it. I was like, oh my gosh, like this Oxford place is really cool. And because I had such like terrible expectations because of Cambridge, I was like, oh my gosh, like I really have to go here, like I have to apply. So I applied. And again, that delusion, I was like, it doesn't matter, like MG, like you've done all the work experience, like you're so diligent, like you're 100% going to get in. Everyone was like, of course you're going to get into Oxford Law, MG. Like everyone was really, really hyping me and stuff. So I will never forget that day where it was actually, I think it was an inset day or something. It was a Friday, I just got out of the shower and everyone was hearing back about whether they were going to get interviews or not. And I just remember I saw my phone and I saw an email. So I was like, and I was at home alone and stuff. So I opened it and I just saw, thank you for your application, but unfortunately you have not been accepted. Oh, no. And I just screamed and I was just crying. It was like someone had torn my heart like out of me. Yeah. And I realized at that time that I seeked a lot of like academic validation and stuff. So I think that's why I took it so deeply. So I just called my friend and I was like, oh my God, like Oxford rejected me. And it just made me have like almost an existential crisis. I was only like 17. So I was so dramatic, but I was like, oh my gosh, like, do I even want to do law? Like, is it really for me? And I didn't even care anymore about like what uni I went to. So I was like, okay, like I've got into some unis that maybe aren't as great, but like, let me just go and have fun now. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I was so heartbroken. And because I done well in my like predicted grades and my LNAT, which was like the entrance exam, I was like, why did I not get in? Like, I was just heartbroken. So much so that even when people were getting, like months later, getting accepted in, and I remember in study, even though our study centre in Brampton was silent, people would like scream when they got accepted into Cambridge and Oxford. That whole day I was just crying. I was like, why are you actually crying still? Because I just thought, oh my gosh, because I've not gone to Oxford and Cambridge, like I'm not going to be successful. And all my dreams that I'd had have basically been torn to pieces. But I posted about it on LinkedIn as a nerd I was and still am. And when I posted about the rejection, I got like a lot of very positive feedback, and a lot of people, especially who were much older and well into their careers, like offering to like mentor me and to support me and to help me just kind of realize that Oxford is not the be all and end all. And that kind of started like my content journey, if you like, that rejection. So yeah, I'm very thankful now, because I don't think I would even be here or doing any of the things I'm doing outside of academia if I'd gone to Oxford. But at the time, it was like someone had just...
I know, it feels like it's the end of the world. Like, what am I going to do now? My life is done. My career is done. But
especially because everyone else around you is getting in. It makes you think, oh my gosh, am I stupid? That's the only thing about Brampton, that you can feel like that. But when you come out of that, you realise, okay, you're actually okay.
You're actually good. You're doing well. You're doing well. So how did you pick the law path? Is that something that you've always... There's some people I speak to, and they're like, as a child, I really wanted to go down this path. Were you like that? Was it sixth form? Was it just... As you were studying, did you think that this is the path I wanted to go down? How did you decide law?
So funnily enough, like I said, I was in year 10 and I was like, okay, I want to be more focused now and stuff like that. So I was just thinking, okay, what do I want to be when I'm older? Because I should pick my A-levels accordingly. I'm looking at sixth forms now, etc. So I was obsessed with the show Suits.
Oh, I love Suits. Such a great show.
Like, I just loved it. And Jessica Pearson, which was the...
Yes.
Black, strong,
I loved
female
her.
partner.
Like everything, and the way she just carried herself, I was like, yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Very classy, put together. I was like, that's who I want to be. And because I really, really loved that show, I was like, okay, what about law? So I did like, little Google search. I was like, okay, getting into law, like, what does it entail? And then I found like 2 programs. So like a summer school in year 10, like year 10 summer. And then I went to like this open day in year 11 summer, I think it was UCL at the time. And I was like, okay, cool. Lawyers, they get paid a lot. Let me go down law. And then in sixth form, I kept on having different experiences, going to open days at actual corporate law firms and stuff. And the firm I actually have a training contract with now, I went to them.
Oh, amazing.
They were the first law firm I actually ever went to, and that was in year 12 in Brampton. Yeah, so I was like, okay, I can envision myself here, like my Jessica Pearson dream kind of coming true here. So at first it was just like, aesthetically it looks good and stuff. But I think as I've, of course, made more informed choices now, I saw law as a career that I could develop a lot of skills from and a lot of value from. And I think when you're picking your career, a lot of people focus a lot on the money and stuff like that. But I feel like the actual skills that you can get from a career should inform that path, especially if you don't want to, like for me, I don't necessarily want to stay in law forever. And I think we could talk about that later. But because of that, I now see it as, okay, I'm going to train and qualify as a lawyer because it will give me like tangible skills that I can use in terms of understanding businesses, understanding contracts, working under pressure, working in a team. Like this sounds like an advert for like law. But no, genuinely, that was my motivation. Like the skills you can learn from being at a firm like this are literally like invaluable, and you can do pretty much anything after that. So
I think that's such a good way of looking at your career path. I think sometimes people are consumed by the money. I mean, the money is a big factor. You want to have a good quality of life, right? But there are other things that you can get from jobs, and looking at your career path like that, I think is a really good way. It's really interesting to see you actually analyze it like that.
Yeah.
As this is Pennies to Pounds, we naturally have to add in some finances in there, right? So you are a uni student, second year uni student.
Final year.
Yeah. So third year uni student. How have you managed, and how do you continue to manage living your best life, right? So you seeing your friends, going out to parties if that's what you want to do, with obviously being a uni student, because I assume you don't live at home, right? Yeah. So how do you manage your finances with, living your best life? We're at uni, but I also need to look after myself. I also need to pay the bills. What do you do?
Okay, so I have slightly interesting financial philosophies that you will probably disagree with.
I'm interested to hear it. Go on, let's talk about it.
Okay, so the first thing is, I will say, like, just caveat it with, my expenses aren't that much because thankfully my parents pay for my rent, which is a huge cost already, in like they manage that. So I have like less expenses per se. But I don't get like a lot of SFE for London at all. I think I get like 5K or something. That's just like living costs, bills and stuff. So I'm like, okay, pay the bills first. Put some money aside.
Yes.
you know, for like emergency fund and stuff. But you're not going to be in London forever. You're not going to have your university experience forever. So I'm not saying you need to go to like Libertine and splash like thousands on bottles. But I'm like, if I feel like an experience will be worth it, whether that be like emotionally, spiritually, financially, physically, mentally, whatever, I will pay for it. So yes, of course you should budget and use the sheets and stuff. But I feel like at uni, it's a time to be like, to spend the disposable income you have, because it will build you up as a person. And I see that in my philosophy of like investing in yourself essentially. So for example, if I've had a really long week, yes, I will pay money and just go and buy some expensive ticket off Twitter to go to like recess day party, for example, because it will enrich me in that way. Or if my friends want to go out and I've not seen them in ages, then I will just go to a nice restaurant, because I know, okay, if I've got all of these expenses after after uni and I'm paying rent and stuff, I just won't be able to do that. So I'm not frivolous, but I'm not someone who keeps the money close to themselves, because I'm like, sometimes you have to spend the money just to enjoy. And also, one thing I've learned is to not lose money by trying to be cheap. So, for example, in first year, I was like, okay, I need to buy a bag for uni. Let me just get a cheap Zara £20 one. I think you probably know where I'm going with this. But that bag, so bad. The bag is always breaking, and it was just ugly. Like it just wasn't giving, you know. So I was like, okay, let me just spend money on a nice Telfar bag that I've got in the corner there.
Very nice bag, by the way. Very nice bag.
You. Not because like it's just because it's Telfar, because I know it's actually a sturdy, high quality bag that I can actually use probably when I'm working. And I get much more use out of it. I use it all the time now. I'm not embarrassed. It holds all my books at uni. And I think sometimes you hear a lot of people say like, save money, cut costs, like budget, like don't buy that coffee. I don't disagree with that. But if something is going to make your life experience better and just easier for you to actually achieve what you need to, then I feel like you should do it, especially at uni, because I feel like uni is the time where you need to experience things. So if you need to network and meet people, don't say, okay, I need to save this £20 for my house that I'm going to buy in 10 years. When you could just go out, spend that £20, meet the people that you need to, and be elevated in that way. Does that make sense?
No, I agree. I don't know what you thought I was going to disagree.
No, because like a lot of, I feel like with a lot of personal finance, people say, you know, cut costs, like don't just like spend money on like wasteful things and.
Well, thankfully, Pennies to Pounds is not like that. Pennies to Pounds, I like to think that Pennies to Pounds is very realistic. The tips that we offer on this platform is very realistic. Like I always tell people, I mean, emergency fund is important. Plan for your future is important. But the now is also very important. Like I love to travel, and that's something that I like to do. It looks after my mental health. I get to meet people. So that's not something I'm going to skimp on, right? But then I'm also not going to do it to the point where I now get home and I have no money. I can't even leave the house again.
Yeah.
And I can't afford my phone bill. I'm not going to do it like that, right? Yeah. But I completely agree with you, especially at university. I think that's when I realised as well that I need to manage my money. I've got bills to pay. I've got to make sure that I can actually eat and not eat pot noodles every day. But university lasts for 3 years. Depending on what degree you have, maybe 4, maybe 6, but typically 3 years, right? And it feels like forever when you're in it. But that was so long ago for me now. And if I could go back, I'd be like, oh my gosh, it was such a fun time in life. And I'm grateful that I did everything that I did then. And you're absolutely right. You should just go and have fun. If it's going to make you feel better, do it. If you're going to meet new people, do it. Don't feel like, oh, but no. You know, I saw this video online that says I should really put that, like you said, that £20 away for my house in 10 years, for my kids in 15 years. Enjoy the now.
It's a bit much. And I think another reason I kind of feel like that is because even when I was picking like law as a career and like the other stuff, it's about making a lot of money to accommodate for that. Because I think sometimes no matter how much you make, no matter how much you save, if you don't make a lot, you'll still feel like you are struggling, or like you won't have enough and you won't be able to enjoy those certain experiences, no matter how much budgeting and things like that you do. So I think one thing I always kind of tell people is that, you know, when you are picking a career, especially if it's corporate, like do think about the money, do think about how much you're going to make and how much you can make in the future. Because if you just pick something that's not essentially high, like quite high value, then no matter how much you save and stuff, you still may not be able to live the life that you want. And of course, if I have a lot of money, but I'm terrible at managing it and someone doesn't have a lot, and they're good at managing it, they'll be better off. But if you can have both, then like a
Why
win
not?
is a win.
A win is a win.
A win is
win
really
is
a
a
win.
win.
So yeah.
You mentioned earlier that law is what you're going down now. You want to get into that, but it's not what you want to do forever. So what does your future plans look like for you?
It's not that I don't know, but I think for me, law is a good foundation. And I do, like I said, I do content creation on the side, and that does generate income, thank God. But I wouldn't necessarily want to be a full-time influencer as well. But I think I would more want to have a kind of like a portfolio career where I just do many different things. But fundamentally for me, it's really about business. I'm building something that can stand by itself, something that is offline. As much as I've loved being a creator and the experiences that it's been able to give me and stuff like that, I think that you always have to show up, you always have to be online, and you may not always be in the space to do that. And especially because my content is based on the law and what I do in education, I'm not going to be a student forever. I'm not going to be a lawyer forever. And I truly believe that the way to sustainable, scalable wealth is through creating business and, again, that value add. So I really try to see myself as, okay, you're an asset, develop yourself, and what are things that can kind of come off from that. For me, that's kind of the next direction that I want to take. So
amazing.
Thank you.
Before we round off, what would be some of your key tips for anyone who is in university or going to university and they're a bit worried about maybe their course or what they're going to go down, or they want to get into law? So it's a bit broad.
Okay, so for uni students, my advice would be, both current and incoming uni students, would be, even though you are fixed on one thing, on one career, on one degree, make sure you expand yourself outside of that. Like, yes, it's obviously good to be focused and to decide to go to all of the networking events and stuff to build up your life, but at the same time, what you may start off with is not what you're going to finish with. And I think for me, it's not a regret I have, because I think I'm doing it now, but because I was so focused on law, I would not do anything outside of law. I would only go to law society events. I would only speak to people who are studying law. But when I realized that I was so good creatively and things like that, I was able to see that as a new way to kind of explore something different. And luckily, the experiences I get as a creator has enabled me to do that. But if you're at uni, still create that experience, even if you're not a creator, even if you are a lawyer, but you want to go into fashion as well, or you study medicine, but you're also interested in photography. I feel like the future of careers is being able to do multiple things to, again, create the life that you want, which is ultimately the goal for me. So I would tell people to make sure that they explore things outside of their degree and be open to that. I also think just don't stick with the people you came to uni with, and don't stick in that comfort zone. I feel like the fact that I was able to go to different schools in different areas outside of my own, and even now go to university in the most diverse city, I think it's enabled me to have such a unique perspective on life. And there's a quote from T.I., even the quotes can be cringy, but I actually love it. And it says ambition comes from exposure. The more you're exposed to, the more you expect. And I think that that's truly a testament of the importance of not just seeing your environment as the limit to where you can be. And that will look different for different people, but I think that's something I've really held on to. So if I see something and I think, oh, this is great, I truly believe that I can do it, and I can take the steps to go forward doing that. So regardless of the uni you're at, I feel like that's just so key. And for those who want to go into law, I would say make sure you actually want to go into it, because child, law is not
it's not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy. I'm glad I'm going into it, but I don't think it's for everyone. And a lot of law students end up studying law, doing everything around law, realize they hate law, but they're at the end of their third year and they're like, what can I do now? So again, it ties into the exploring point, but I think also make sure you really want to do it, and to get ready to read a lot. I mean, shout out to ChatGPT making the cases a lot easier and just summarizing it. But just be prepared for that. Oh, and also, if you really want to be a lawyer, I would say don't necessarily study law, just because you can convert
the conversion courses, right?
And stuff. Yeah. So again, I just think everyone needs to not be too tunnel visioned and narrow minded when they're only 18 years old. be broad. If you have another interest, whether that's politics or economics, do it, and you can still do law as well. So
great tips.
Yeah.
For
Thank you.
anyone who is listening and watching and they want to keep up to date with your journey and learn more about what you put out and what you've got going on, where can they find you?
Okay, so you can find me on TikTok and Instagram at Mary-Grace Olu. So that's Mary, the Mother of Jesus, Grace, the grace of God, and Olu, O-L-U.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn as well. If you just type in Mary Grace, I should come up. But yeah.
Amazing. Mary-Grace, thank you so much for gracing this podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And to everyone listening and watching, we'll be back again next week with another episode. Bye, guys.